Right, so the next part we are just going to focus on the Nutrisens and the installation thereof. So this is the blade, what we call the blade. This is the part that will go into the soil. You always have this the sensor part showing upwards, and we prefer to install this at a degree of 45 degrees. So we will enter the soil at an angle of 45 degrees. Now just to show you where it is done when it's finished. So we always use conduit to protect the cable, and this piece of conduit runs up to the area where the cable comes out. Okay, so the Nutrisens goes into the soil at that angle, and then where it comes out of the soil we run it through a piece of conduit to protect the cable until it goes inside the telemetry box. As we've explained, we usually install two Nutrisens sensors, one in the root zone, active root zone, and one in the drainage area. For the purposes of this exercise, we are only going to do the shallow installation, which is the short one, and we have predetermined that we want the Nutrisens sensor to be at 300 millimeters or roughly 12 inches deep. So to achieve that, to be, in other words, on a vertical depth of 300 millimeters or 12 inches, and if we go in at an angle of 45 degrees, we need to have this short tool. We need to have a mark that's at roughly 425 millimeters, which is just where this piece of insulation tape is. And so I've marked this, and the next step is I'm going to show you how we're going to install this, but very important that one predetermines the depth at which you want the Nutrisens sensor to be at. Right, so the next piece is where we actually install the Nutrisens sensor. So I'm going to go in at 45 degrees. Important that we have to also determine where the dripper is, where the emitter is, because we do want to have a sense for when the fertilizer is applied and that water comes in. We want to make sure that we are in that dripping onion. So I'm just going to be a little bit off the dripper, about 100 millimeters off. And remember, when we go in at an angle, we'll end up there. So I'm going to start here at 200 in front of the dripper, and then I'll end up at 100 millimeters behind the dripper. Okay, so easy at more or less 45 degrees. And you can see I'm almost at my depth, and that is how deep we want to go. So I'm going to pull it out. Right, going to clean it again. Just to make sure that we are at the depth that we need to be at. Alright. And the next step is we are going to install the Nutrisens sensor. So I position it like this. Like that, and I'm going to make real sure that I install it like that. Push it in until it stops. Just pull out my positioner, and there my Nutrisens sensor is installed. Now the next step here is we're going to make a slurry mix of the soil that I have just taken out, and pour the slurry mix into that hole. Right, so we have taken the soil from this hole that we've made. We've made a nice slurry mix out of this. Exactly the same soil that came out of this. We already have the Nutrisens sensor in there, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the slurry mix into the hole until the entire hole is filled, and that then completes the soil part. So the only thing that happens next is we'll connect the cable, the connector, to the telemetry unit that you've seen is over there. In this case, the Nutrisens are already installed, so we're not going to do this now, but this is basically the idea. Make the hole, fill it with slurry, and then connect it to the telemetry piece. Okay, the final part of the Nutrisens installation also involves the installation of what we call suction probes. The whole idea of the suction probes is that once it has been installed and more or less at the same depth and area where the Nutrisens is, the shallow one is at 300, so the whole idea here is to go 300 millimeters deep. We'll install it at 300 millimeters, and so that this area is at the same depth as the Nutrisens sensor. We will then apply a suction negative pressure on this suction probe, and after 24 hours we'll come and extract the soil solution. So the whole idea is to compare the soil solution that we've extracted from here, compare that to what the Nutrisens value is on the chart. So we've determined that we want to have this clay tip at 300 millimeters deep. So I've just made a mark here with masking tape, so that's how deep we will install the suction probe. The Nutrisens, the shallow one, is at 300, so we want this tip to be exactly at the same depth that we have the Nutrisens, the shallow Nutrisens sensor. Okay, so the next part is we're going to install the suction probe to the desired depth. So we know where the Nutrisens is. We want to be more or less at the same depth, at the same area. So I'm just going to install the suction probe here, going down to the desired depth. I have my bucket. That's how deep we want to go. We can just compare. Okay, so okay, I'll just see it. Okay. They are at the desired depth. So the next step is I'm just going to fill the bottom with some sand that I have prepared to make sure that that bottom tip there's clear sand around it. So right, and then I'm just going to pour, take that off, okay, and then I'm going to pour more water in here. And there's our suction probe installed. So what happens next is this is now at the same depth that the shallow Nutrisens is in. 24 hours prior that we want to take the soil solution. We'll vacuum it, put the vacuum pump on it, apply the vacuum, more or less -8 bar, and then in 24 hours we'll come back, open the valve, extract the soil solution that we'll measure with Horiba, and then we'll get a nitrate and potassium reading for that specific depth that we have the Nutrisens on.